Does Austin, Texas have a serial killer?
Speculators have dubbed this the Rainy Street Killer. Among a street flanked with skyscrapers is Rainy Street. Now, if you've never been to downtown Austin, it is filled with tech bros, bachelorettes in pink cowboy hats. There's an entire street filled with bars and clubs that people just walk down and spend their nights partying. Now, just a little bit over from that downtown city center, we have Lady Bird Lake. They have now coined Lady Bird Lake as the Lake of Death. True crime fanatics believe that the serial killer is targeting young men. Jason John, 30 years old, disappeared February 5th, 2023, while he was out celebrating a promotion at work. His body was pulled from Lady Bird Lake just a week later, and followed by another body of 33-year-old Jonathan Honey. There was Clifton Axtell, 40, found March 5th, 2023, and John Christopher Hayes Clark, who was 30, April 15th, 2023. While it is not rare of an occurrence for bodies to appear in a lake, specifically, this is a lake that you are not allowed to swim in. There has been over 10 bodies found since July of 2022. All men between the ages of 20 and 40. Now, the most recent victim was a woman, so she does not fit the serial killer's previous MO. Authorities have told the public that they do not think that this is a serial killer. And the police have even gone as far to say that most of these deaths they do not believe were foul play.
Celebrities that were killed by their own fans. John Lennon. His fan asked for an autograph and then later shot him at the back and on his shoulder. Christina Grimmie. She was shot dead during a meet and greet by fan Kevin James Loibl.
This man used a knife and a fire poker to unalive his mom because she ruined his life. Trigger warning, this is a very brutal case, and I apologize if I mispronounce any names. Robert Owen Rankin woke up on the day after Christmas in 2013 with a chilling intent to kill his mother, Margaret Ronner, whom he held responsible for every misfortune in his life. Confessing to the police, Rankin described the grisly scene of how he used a fire poker and a buck knife to disembowel his mother after his initial attempt to break her neck failed. Despite her screams and resistance, he persisted, even acknowledging her formidable strength. After ensuring her death, he showered, walked the dog, and calmly informed his father of his actions, prompting a call to 911. Police discovered Margaret's mutilated body at the foot of the stairs with her intestines found in a wood stove and nearby bucket. Despite his denial of substance influence, Robert proudly declared sole responsibility for the murder, leading to his arrest and custody. Robert claimed that he believed his mother was an alien life form who was there to suck his energy. After his trial, the judge accepted his not guilty by reason of insanity plea, and he was confined to a mental hospital. 60 years confinement in a mental institution is what they decided on for Robert, and they stated that his mental institution would closely resemble a corrections facility.
Right now, authorities are searching for an Iowa teenager convicted of killing her alleged rapist when she was just 15.
Just so we're all clear, if you see her, no, you didn't. No, the fuck you did not.
Another female student moves into frame outside of the bathroom in front of the drinking fountain, and she actually opens the women's bathroom door. And then she immediately turns around and leaves. In the same breath, like
What?
I'm pretty sure the door doesn't even close all the way. You can see Philip exiting the bathroom door, and you can tell that he is clearly uncomfortable. He's adjusting his clothes. He's like running out of the bathroom.
Someone exited before him.
Someone came in to go in and didn't go in. Opened the door.
Oh, got it.
Whatever she saw made her not want to go in the bathroom. And she turned around. Not even 2 seconds later, he follows her out.
Holy crap.
All in the school bathroom. At this point, Philip then, you can see this on the camera, made his way outside to the student parking lot. And there's footage where you can actually see his hand covered in blood as he's walking down the stairs. Like, he walks out of the bathroom and you can see that he's clearly covered in blood. So he's gone outside and ditched his blue hoodie, and he comes back in just wearing a white t-shirt.
I can't believe he thinks that he's not going to get caught.
He made his way back to Miss Ritzer's classroom, and then is seen on the cameras coming out the door again at 3:11 with a red hoodie on now. He goes somewhere and then emerges back into the camera view with a recycling bin at this point. And he gets to the bathroom with it at 3:16 p.m. So he goes outside and pulls a recycling bin in from outside and brings it all the way up to the bathroom. 6 minutes later at 3:22 p.m., Philip exits the women's bathroom in a white t-shirt again. So his red hoodie is now missing once again. He was wearing a black ski mask and pulling the bin with Colleen inside toward the school elevator. He makes it to the elevator and then pulls it outside, and that's obviously where we lose frame.
Was there any town drama or any like big event that happened in your small town growing up?
Besides the disappearance of Susan Smalley and Stacey Madison.
I'm sorry, come again?
2 girls went missing in my hometown. Before I was born, these 2 girls, it was like the last night of spring break. They go out just to go drive around in their 1967 Mustang, these like 2 best friends, and it's their senior year. Okay, they're going to be graduating in like a month or 2, and they don't return. And I've always been trying to do some research to figure it out. I've
like
been
try
asking,
to solve it.
There's so many different theories about a lot of people that think what happened to them, and I've been very interested in the case.
This 11-year-old girl was held captive for 18 years and found alive. This is actually the case that got me into true crime when I was 11 years old. J.C. Lee Dugard was only 11 years old when she was walking to her school bus. A car pulled up next to her, grabbed her, and drove off with her. J.C.'s stepfather actually witnessed her abduction, tried to get on his bike to go after the car that took his stepdaughter, but unfortunately was not fast enough. J.C. was abducted by this married couple, Philip and Nancy Garrido, and the hate I feel for these 2 people is... Nancy and Philip drove J.C. to their house over 100 miles away. And that is when Philip Garrido SA'd J.C. for the first time. The Garridos had a long rectangular property that they cut in half with a fence, so people thought that their property line ended before it actually did, and they kept JC in like that back half of the property with all these like tarps and sheds. JC spent most of her time alone and was only ever visited by Philip so he could SA her. It's so sad because JC had so many opportunities to be found. Philip was a known SA offender and on probation at the time, and a probation officer would come to the home and do like inspections of the house, never realizing that JC was being held captive in the backyard behind a fence. 2 years after JC was abducted, she got pregnant by Philip for the first time when she was only 13 years old. A few years after that, JC had her second daughter and tried her best to educate her 2 daughters with her 5th grade education. And again, this is just so heartbreaking, but I guess Philip's wife Nancy was insecure that JC was the mother of his children, like JC wanted to be there, being SA'd by her husband. So Nancy insisted that the 2 young girls would grow up thinking that Nancy was their mother and JC was just like their big sister. Philip Garrido was clearly very mentally unwell. He thought that angels were talking to him through the wall, and it only got worse when he started abusing hard substances. And he was actually convinced that God wanted him to take and SA little girls. And by 2009, Philip Garrido had convinced himself that he was being spoken to by God, that he was the chosen one and was meant to spread God's word. In the next part, I'm going to tell you guys how this actually led to JC being found 18 years after she was abducted, so comment for part 2. This is the story behind the most hated woman in America, Casey Anthony. There's a case that y'all have wanted to see me cover, it's this one. Casey Anthony was only 19 years old when she got pregnant with her daughter, Kaylee. Casey Anthony lived with her parents during this time, and they pretty much raised Kaylee for her until after like one too many arguments, and then Casey moved out and took her daughter with her. So Casey's parents would call like non-stop to see or speak with Kaylee, their granddaughter, and every single time Casey would have some kind of excuse why they couldn't. After like a month of dealing with this, they finally just showed up to where Casey was staying, and Kaylee was not with her. After going back and forth with her daughter for so long about like where the hell is my granddaughter, Casey finally admitted that the nanny she had hired for Kaylee had taken her and she hadn't seen her toddler in 31 days. Casey Anthony just hadn't seen her 2-year-old daughter in 31 days, didn't report her missing, and didn't tell anyone. So this is when Casey's mother finally called 911 to say that no one had seen her granddaughter in over a month and that her daughter's car smelled like there had been a dead body in it. And that's her words, not mine. And during the 31 days that her 2-year-old daughter was missing, Casey Anthony was just partying, living her best life without a care in the world. They did arrest Casey Anthony for child neglect because her daughter had been kidnapped by this nanny and she just didn't report it. Cadaver dogs and an air test both pretty much confirmed that a decomposing body had been in Casey Anthony's car. Casey Anthony just kept up with the story that she was taken by the nanny. In fact, Casey Anthony sent investigators on a wild goose hunt to go find this nanny that Kaylee was with until it was confirmed there was no nanny, there had never been a nanny, and Casey Anthony just made the entire story up. And that's the thing about Casey Anthony, is she's a compulsive liar. Actually, if I tried to say like every single lie that Casey Anthony told while the entire country was looking for her daughter, this video would be like 10 parts long. Tragically, a few months after she was reported missing, the remains of 2-year-old Kaylee Anthony were found in the woods only blocks away from her home. Her cause of unaliving could not be determined, but duct tape was spread across her mouth area, leading some people to believe that she maybe had suffocated because there were no trauma to her body. And Kaylee's mother, Casey Anthony, was arrested and went to trial, and this was like the biggest trial ever, and I'm sure a lot of you guys remember it, and it seemed like the entire world was against Casey Anthony. Her defense actually tried to point the fingers at her own father, Kaylee's grandfather, saying that he SA'd her as a child, was probably SA'ing Kaylee, and was responsible for her unaliving. Casey's father actually tried to unalive himself after Kaylee's body was found, and the defense said that this was proof of a guilty conscience. And honestly, I don't know what to make of that, but I will just say I have never been so confident in someone's guilt like I am about Casey Anthony. Personally, I believe that Casey Anthony never wanted to be a mom. She just wanted to be young and free and party, and maybe whatever happened to her daughter Kaylee was an accident. Maybe it wasn't. And I think the only person who knows for sure is Casey Anthony. But to the shock and honestly the terror of the entire country, Casey Anthony was found not guilty of all charges but giving misleading or false information to police. And since this, Casey Anthony has really lived out of the public eye, except for a 2022 docuseries she did with Peacock where she told her story. I've never seen it. I will never see it because I'm sure she was paid for her involvement in some way, and I do not support that. But I have read articles about what is in the docuseries, and it turns out she's still pointing the fingers at her father. But only last month in January of 2024, there was this Casey Anthony's parents polygraph test TV special where both of Casey Anthony's parents took a polygraph test and they both passed. And as far as I can see, Casey Anthony has been offered a polygraph many times over the years to clear her name, and she's refused every single time. I think with how big this case got and everyone's hatred towards Casey Anthony, we forget the victim a lot, which is Kaylee Anthony, this beautiful little girl who lost her life and never ever got a chance to live. And it's so tragic, so I really do want us to remember Kaylee Anthony when we talk about this case. In the comments, let me know what you think, what case you want to see me cover next, and if you want to keep up with me, I have an Instagram in my bio and also a YouTube channel in my bio. There's only 2 videos on there, but I believe I'm posting my 3rd video either tomorrow or sometime this weekend.
The Ken and Barbie Killers, one of Canada's most notorious serial killing couple. This one's insane. Let's begin with Paul, who was born in Scarborough in 1964. His family was said to be very wealthy but very dysfunctional. His father was known for being very inappropriate with young girls, including his own daughter. He was charged with that. Literally gross, hate him. Despite all of this, he was known to be a very polite and friendly boy. He was really bright and did really well in school. That's until Paul was 16 years old and he got in a huge argument with his mother. In this argument, she revealed that she had an affair and that his father wasn't actually his father. Paul already kind of hated his father for everything he had done, but now he resented his mother as well. It was said that Paul was never the same after this. He would later go to the University of Canada, where he would have several girlfriends, but he also had quite a few in high school. His high school girlfriends would say that he was super thoughtful and caring, but the ones in university said that he was abusive and that he loved publicly humiliating them. In 1987, he would commit his first SA. The girl was only 21 and he got away with it and committed 3 more. But then he temporarily stopped when he met the woman of his dreams. Her name was Carla. She was born in 1970. Nothing really stands out in her childhood as abnormal. It was said that she was really girly as a kid, but then in high school she went through kind of like a dressing really dark and obsessed with death kind of phase. She was said to have dark fantasies as well. It was said when they met there was an immediate connection. And she took Paul back to her hotel room that night and they realized they had the exact same dark fantasies. They kind of made a pact to play them out. And he was extremely abusive towards Carla, but she encouraged it. It was said that being treated in that way was part of her fantasy. It was sort of like a slave fantasy. Paul then told Carla about all the essays he had committed. And instead of being like everyone else and being like, "You psycho, stop," she actually encouraged him to do more. What the fuck? So he continued his little rampage around Scarborough. And one of the women that he had attacked actually saw his face. So they created a composite sketch, which looked a lot like Paul. People who knew Paul would actually call the police and let them know, like, "We know a guy who looks like this." But the police interviewed him and didn't think he was suspicious. He was a very good manipulator. Stick around for part 2.
The shooter was Diane Downs. So 9 months after the shooting took place, Diane was arrested on February 28th, 1984. She didn't seem to have any guilt. Diane was charged with 1 count of murder and 2 counts of attempted murder and criminal assault. Christy actually testified, but it was vitally important. They were worried that Christy may not be able to handle it, testifying with her mother in the room against her, that maybe she would be just too emotionally traumatized to even talk about it in front of people. Christy was only 9 years old. She had survived a horrific incident and they just had no idea how she would handle all of that pressure. But she did a really good job. She told the court that she remembered her mom stopping the car, getting out, and going back to the trunk to get something out. She said that Cheryl was in the front seat and that her and Danny were in the back, and then Diane came around the car with something in her hand. And she recalled her mother leaning into the car and shooting Cheryl first at point blank range. And Christy was watching all of this. Then she leaned over the back seat and shot Danny, and then reached over and shot her as well. Then she said she watched Diane shoot herself, wrap a towel around her arm, and get back in the car and start driving slowly towards the hospital. And by the time the trial started on May 10th, 1984, Diane was noticeably pregnant. Yep, that's right, Diane was pregnant once again. There's a clip of her walking into the courtroom, showing off her pregnant belly and smiling, as if she's very proud of herself for getting pregnant once again. Later on, they interviewed her, and she said that the reason she got pregnant again is because she missed her children and she was lonely.
15-year-old Adriana Davidson was found dead this afternoon at the football stadium at Ann Arbor's Pioneer High School. Police are clear there appears to be no foul play here.
Surveillance video of Adriana on Friday coming on the bus to school, then leaving, and coming back again around noon on Friday. Surveillance shows she never entered the building. Her phone was found by the tennis courts, which are close to the football stadium. Her family, friends, and the sheriff's department searched for her over the weekend. They brought tracking dogs in late this morning at Pioneer High School and found her body in the football.
Sandra Chesky, a 13-year-old girl, walks into the Sioux Falls Police Department at this moment. She tells the front desk, I just need to talk to someone. I was with some friends in Gitche-Manitou Park Saturday night, and some people showed up who I think were police officers, and they separated me from my friends, and I think maybe my friends were taken away by the cops, so I'm wondering if they're here at the police station.
What?
Yes.
So they pretended to be cops and took her friends.
She's rushed into an office to be interviewed and to figure out what's going on. Did they really have a living person who was there that night during the slaughter? Were her friends that she was talking about Michael, Stuart, Dana, and Roger? Sandra tells police, yes, that's who I was with.
I thought she was talking about a different group.
No. She says that, no, I'm pretty sure, like, those are my friends, and I thought they were here because the police came.
What the heck?
Yes. So she's like, I just want to know where they are because I've been trying to call Roger. He's actually my boyfriend, and he hasn't been home. So police look at each other, and they're like, oh, no. And then they face Sandra, and they tell her that they aren't sure what happened, and they really do need to talk to her because they think she has answers. But before they do that, they need to tell her that her friends didn't come home with police from the campsite that night, and they're not here at the station. They believe the people who showed up and took her weren't actually police, and that her friends and her boyfriend had been murdered.
Welcome to part 26 of random shit about serial killers that you may or may not find interesting. Gary Ridgway, otherwise known as the Green River Killer, claimed the lives of at least 48 women, but is suspected of between 70 to 90 plus murders. One thing that he would do is remove the jewelry of his victims, take it to work, and leave it in the women's restrooms for women to find, and then get off on his female coworkers wearing the jewelry that they thought that they were just lucky to find at work. Edmund Kemper, otherwise known as the Co-Ed Killer, claimed a total of 10 lives, including 6 young women, his mother, her best friend, and his paternal grandparents. After the murder of his mother, Ed Kemper called the police on a payphone, turned himself in, and waited there for them to pick him up. Before he was able to be represented, he gave every detail that he could of each crime so that there was no way that he could be found not guilty. When asked what he thought was a just punishment for his crimes, he responded, death by torture. He is adamant that people like him do not belong in society and to this day denies any parole hearings. This is Maria Katharina Swanenberg. Motivated by the money she would get from insurance policies and inheritance, during the early 1880s, Maria poisoned over 100 people with arsenic, of which at least 27 died. 2 of her victims included her own mother and father, while it is speculated that at least 16 of her victims were family members. Maria holds a spot as the Guinness Book of World Records worst serial poisoner ever.
It is truly unbelievable how evil some people can actually be. Today we're going to be talking about the murder of Kelly Clayton. It was a Monday night and Kelly stayed home with the kids while Thomas went over to a friend's house to play poker. He gets into his neon green Serve Pro work truck and makes the 12-minute drive back home. He arrived back home around 12:30, and within a matter of minutes of walking in the door, he would be making a frantic 911 call because inside the house, lying on the kitchen floor, was Kelly's body, and she had been badly beaten. I mean, to the point where it was obvious that no one could do anything to save her. And there was more to the crime scene than meets the eye. So investigators say that Kelly was first attacked upstairs in her bedroom. Based on the blood found on the door of her children's bedroom, it's believed that she ran here first and tried to barricade herself inside in an attempt to protect her children. But when she wasn't able to get away from her attacker at the door, Kelly yelled and screamed for the kids to run, but there wasn't anywhere for them to go. And this is when it's believed she was violently thrown from the top of the stairs. A giant hole in the wall at the bottom of the staircase shows where she landed. She died due to blunt force trauma, and she was beaten so badly that she was unrecognizable. It became very clear to investigators right off the bat that whoever did this did not come into this home with the intention to rob this family. They came in with the intention to murder Kelly in a brutal, very personal way. So now it was up to them to figure out who and why.
After 3.5 years, there will finally be a trial for Tylee Ryan and JJ Ballo. 16-year-old Tylee was last seen on September 8, 2019, and her 7-year-old brother JJ on the 22nd. No one knew they were missing 4 months. On social media, the Ballos appeared to be a normal, happy family, but that wasn't reality. At this point, their mom Lori was actually fully convinced that she was the second coming of Jesus Christ. In February of that year, Lori's 4th husband Charles filed for a divorce. She had recently become obsessed with doomsday books written by author Chad Daybell. On January 31st, Charles was actually seen on body cam footage expressing concern to police that his wife had become unhinged. Lori and Chad had become friends, and he explicitly stated that he feared for his and his children's safety. 6 months later in July, and a few months before the kids went missing, Charles went by Lori's new place in Chandler to pick up up JJ for school. At the scene, he was shot to death by Lori's brother or the kid's uncle Alex, and it was initially ruled to be justified in self-defense. Here's a photo of Lori just after it happened, and here's a screenshot of the message she sent breaking the news to Charles's sons from a previous marriage. So to clear up any confusion, this was Lori and Charles' entire family. Charles was murdered that day in July, but their family included Tylee and JJ along with older sons from previous marriages. Following Charles's death, in the fall, Lori moved herself, the kids, and Uncle Alex to Idaho to be closer to Chad Daybell. The kids were publicly last seen that September, but again, no one knew they were missing. On October 19th, Chad's wife, who you see here, suddenly died in her sleep. With it appearing to be natural, their 5 kids decided not to perform an autopsy. Chad and Lori got married in Hawaii on November 5th, and finally on the 26th, a family member requested a welfare check for the kids. A month later, on December 30th, police officially announced the kids were missing. The couple continued to travel, but Lori was eventually arrested for failing to produce her children. In June of 2020, police ascended on Chad's property in Rexburg and tragically found the remains of Tylee and JJ in the pet graveyard out back. The only good thing to come out of this was Chad's arrest. Uncle Alex has reportedly died of natural causes, but Lori and Chad are expected to face trial together beginning April 3rd. And I know I haven't even gotten into what happened to Tylee and JJ. Those details are in part 2.
Since Columbine, there have been about 380 school shootings, this one being one of them, and unfortunately, I am a school shooting survivor as well. The middle school I went to, that is on that list as well that I was reviewing earlier. Unfortunately, that happened years ago, and so I'm putting myself in the student's shoes, and now as a mom to a young child, and a lot of parents are running up to me saying that they're nervous for the future for their kids, and to be honest, I'm right there with them because I've seen exactly what gun violence can do firsthand. I was in the hallway when the gunman at my school shooting opened fire, shooting and killing one of my peers, and just the shock that moves through your body, I can't even describe it. You just go into true fight or flight. Back to you in the studio.
I just want to hug you. I came from my house right here.
Oh, did you?
And I saw you, and I just want to hug you.
Thank
I know
you so
this is
much.
so difficult for you.
Y'all want to hear a story? The story is going to take us to Omaha, Nebraska, and the very creepy Hummel Park. The park was established in 1930, and it sits on 202 acres. It has a very violent and dark history, and strange stories have circulated about it since the early 1900s. First off, it's rumored to have been at least partially built on a native burial ground, which is never a good idea. And when you first enter the park, you notice that the trees at the entrance seem to lean inward. And legend says that they lean inward because they are weighed down by the spirits of people who were lynched here. And it's said as night falls that strange screaming and crying can be heard. There's also an area of the park known as Devil's Den, where satanic rituals and sacrifices were said to take place. And there are several altars, these things right here, with occult symbols scrawled on them. There is also an abandoned shack or shelter nearby. Their rituals are also said to take place, and it is also covered in occult symbol graffiti. Also in this area, there is a scenic overlook that is known as the Devil's Slide, due to how many people have either jumped from the cliff or fallen from it when the ground seems to give out underneath their feet. One of the most interesting legends in the park and the most interesting features is the stairs that is known as the morphing stairs. It's called that because it said the number of steps seems to change whenever you go up and down. It seems to morph. It said if you count them going up and count them again going down, you'll get a different number every time, and the numbers will never match. The legend also says that if you are going down and counting and somehow correctly count the right number, then the devil will appear and meet you at the bottom and make a deal with you, for a price, of course. There are also many tales of strange inhabitants in the park. The absolute strangest being that there is a secret colony of wild albinos that live there, and that a hidden settlement was made for them back in the late 1800s, and they've been there ever since. And these albino feral people are said to only come out at dusk in order to avoid the sun, and they are said to hide in trees and throw rocks at people or cars. Some even claim that they live in the trees, that the secret colony is up instead of down. Other stories claim that these feral people are actually cannibals and will try to eat anyone who wanders through the park alone at night. There's also a story of a reclusive hermit that lives in the park. I do not know if he is supposed to be albino or not, but he has no nose and will try to cut off your nose if he catches you. And this hermit is believed to inhabit a particular section of the park, which I don't know, I can't find. But children, when they are young, are often advised to cover their nose when walking through that part of the park so that the hermit doesn't get it. My uncle used to try to steal my nose when I was little too. He wasn't a weird hermit, but he did like to scare me as a little kid. But if we put aside these stories of spirits that wander the park and cannibals and a crazy noseless hermit, there is still something very dangerous about this park. There have been more than a few real-life fatal accidents, murders, essays that have taken place here. There were fatal car crashes in 1933 and 1947. A frozen corpse was discovered by motorcyclists in January of 1949, and another frozen body was discovered here in 1960. In June of 1992, a high school student was murdered here. And in May of 2006, someone ghost hunting discovered the body of missing 12-year-old girl Amber Harris. Not an Amber. I think she now has a little memorial in the park. But when I tell y'all the list of horrifying events goes on and on and on, the list of names and bodies, it's insane. It's also believed that some of these incidents may be related to mob activity. There's mob activity in Nebraska? Who knew? It is definitely advised if you live in the Omaha area and you want to go check this park out, don't go alone, especially at night, because it seems a lot of unfortunate things happens to people here. So have any of y'all ever been to Hummel Park? And I really want to know if anyone has ever done the morphing stairs thing. Do you really get a different number every time? Let me know.
This is everything that happened on the news today, but it's going to be simplified in 60 seconds. The CDC has just officially revised the infamous guidelines and says to treat it like the flu. So for people who test positive, you'll no longer have to self-isolate for 5 days. Earth has received an alien message from Mars last year, and the public have been invited to decode it. Basically, this message was not from actual aliens. It was from an artist, and he's just trying to have fun like a little game. So if you want to do it, it's public. Apple just issued a warning for people who charge their iPhone while they're sleeping. There's a full video on my page about this if you want to look. Other news about Apple, people are baffled after learning why the Apple logo has a bite taken out of it. Basically, it's because the initial logo didn't have a bite out of it and people thought it looked like a cherry, so they took a bite so it would look like an apple. Physicists think that they finally figured out how the Egyptians built the pyramids. This is huge. They're saying that sliding friction on sand is greatly reduced by the addition of some, but not that much, water. So they literally think it was built by the use of water, so it was easier to pull the bricks because the friction was less. This pet parrot went missing for 4 years and returned home speaking Spanish. This parrot actually went missing in 2010 and it returned home in 2014, but this story was just released. Dallas and Fort Worth, Texas just ranked the top 10 for the worst drivers in the US. We need to take a poll in the comments for where you think the worst drivers are. I do these roundups every day, so add me so you can come back to me tomorrow. Don't forget.
A lot of parents are running up to me saying that they're nervous for the future for their kids, and to be honest, I'm right there with them because I've seen exactly what gun violence can do firsthand. I was in the hallway when the gunman at my school shooting opened fire, shooting and killing one of my peers, and just the shock that moves through your body, I can't even describe it. You just go into true fight or flight. I hid underneath the risers of my choir class, and my phone was taken away. It was turned off. I was trying to call my mom to tell her what was going on, and she found out through the news. My family from all over the country, I have some family up north, they were trying to get in contact with me and they couldn't. So it was just madness when that was going on. So I knew exactly when I arrived on scene. I saw people running, people on their phones. I knew exactly what they were going through because my family was on the other end of it, trying to get in contact with me whenever I was hiding, and I desperately wanted my phone and wanted to tell them that I love them and that I didn't know what was going to happen. That is the hardest thing being in a school shooting, is not knowing what's going to happen. I lost track of the gunman. I didn't know where he was. I was just hoping and praying under those risers that a police officer was soon going to slide his badge under the door, which eventually did happen, but it felt like lifetimes had gone by waiting to do so. Yes, I know what the students are going through, and unfortunately, and if you do have a student that was nearby or saw what unfolded, please be gentle with them and go ahead and open up a line of communication, offer to talk about it, but if they're not wanting to, that's understandable. I really wasn't ready to talk about my situation for a solid 2 years. It wasn't even months. It was several years until I really was willing to come to terms with what I had seen. So as a mom, you know, open up that line of communication, offer to talk to them about that if they're ready, and if not, just let them know that you're there to support them and to be there with them. So yeah, right now my thoughts and prayers are with the family and students, and I've had people reach out to me on social media saying, you know, we need some change, and that's something that we're going to be following too. What's going to change to help protect our kids here in Nashville and nationwide? My school shooting, that happened in Alabama, and so as we know, this is happening all across the nation.